We begin this morning with breaking news in Ukraine. President Biden making a surprise visit to Kyiv, where he met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky.
It is the first time President Biden has visited Ukraine since Russia invaded the country nearly 1 year ago. President Biden was seen walking the streets of Kyiv side by side with Zelensky to underscore U.S. support for the country and to honor the troops killed in combat. The two leaders also met at the Ukrainian presidential palace to discuss more aid from the U.S. The unscheduled visit comes on President's Day ahead of a high-stakes trip to Poland, where the president is set to meet with several NATO leaders to discuss strategy over Russia's new offensive attacks. President Biden had this to say about supporting Ukraine.
He thought he could outlast us. I don't think he's thinking that right now. God knows what he's thinking, but I don't think he's thinking that. But he's just been plain wrong. Plain wrong. And 1 year later, the evidence is right here in this room. We stand here together. Freedom is priceless. It's worth fighting for as long as it takes. And that's how long we're going to be with you, Mr. President, for as long as it takes.
We'll do it.
Thank you. We have our team standing by to walk us through this morning's breaking developments, including NBC News foreign correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer and global security reporter Dan DeLuce. But let's start with NBC News correspondent Josh Letterman, who is in Poland. Josh, good morning. So walk us through this surprise visit from the president. We knew he was coming to where you are in Poland. Weren't expecting this trip to Ukraine. What did he discuss with President Zelensky?
Well, Joe, this trip shrouded in secrecy. President Biden leaving Washington secretly just after 4 a.m. on Sunday. The White House put out a public schedule for the president that indicated he was still going to be leaving at 7 p.m. tonight for his trip to Poland. All the while, President Biden had already slipped out of the country and was half a world away on his way to Kyiv. Now, for security reasons, the White House is not releasing information about how exactly he got into the country until he is safely out of Ukraine. But we know that this was a major display of unity with the Ukrainians on the eve of the 1 year anniversary. But not only that, anytime the president makes a trip like this, there are all kinds of questions about what are the deliverables? Is the president showing up empty-handed? President Biden telling President Zelensky of Ukraine as they met today in the presidential palace in Kyiv about additional U.S. support. Take a listen.
Just today, that announcement includes artillery ammunition for HIMARS and howitzers, more javelins, anti-armor systems, air surveillance radars to help protect Ukrainian people from aerial bombardments. Later this week, we will announce additional sanctions against elites and companies that are trying to evade sanctions and backfill Russia's war machine. And thanks to bipartisan support in Congress, this week we're delivering billions in direct budgetary support, which the government can put to use immediately.
A year ago, about now, Joe, President Putin was predicting that Russia's military would be able to sweep through the country of Ukraine in a matter of days, claim the capital of Kyiv. And here today, a year later, President Biden was able to take a stroll side by side with President Zelensky through downtown Kyiv, outside St. Michael's Cathedral, which is an area very familiar to journalists who have spent time in Kyiv, clearly trying to send a message that Ukraine remains free from Russian control, at least in the capital of Kyiv, and will continue to fight for all of its territory seized by Russia last year.
Josh, put the president's trip into context for us. What's the latest on the ground there just days before the 1 year anniversary of this war? What did the president see during his walk through the city?
Well, he was able to see a city that has really come back to life and is fighting for its survival, despite the fact that, parts of Ukraine remain under Russian control. And as the Ukrainians have been approaching the end of winter, they have really spent the last several months when there has been a slowdown in the fighting, that the front lines have largely been hardened during the winter, to try to regroup, to try to prepare for a new offensive that they have been promising to try to seize back territory, especially in the east and in the south. But the Russians, at the very same time, are also planning their own offensive. In fact, according to NATO officials, that Russian offensive has already started. And so both sides right now really bracing for an uptick in fighting to see who is going to be able to seize the upper hand as we move out of the winter months. And that is one reason that President Biden felt it was so important to send the message of solidarity right now.
And Josh, real quickly, the president, of course, is still slated to deliver that important address where you are in Warsaw tomorrow. What can we expect?
Yeah, that's right. President Biden will return to the Palace Gardens, just a few blocks from where I'm standing right now, the same place he gave a speech last March urging the world to rally behind Ukraine. His message will largely focus on the need to double down on that support, not to let the foot up on the gas of additional U.S. security assistance, economic assistance to Ukraine, and to try to make clear to European allies and, frankly, to Americans back at home that supporting Ukraine in this fight is not charity, that the security of the rest of the world is at stake, and that supporting Ukraine in this second year of the war is the best way to ensure that the rest of the world does not have to fight Russia, and that global security is able to be maintained.
Josh Letterman in Poland. Josh, thank you so much. Now, President Biden's surprise visit to Ukraine comes amid another major global challenge. The White House is alleging that China has been providing non-lethal support to Russia, and that Beijing is also thinking about sending lethal aid.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken made the allegations on Meet the Press after attending the Munich Security Conference over the weekend. Here's what he said.
China's trying to have it both ways. Publicly, they present themselves as a country striving for peace in Ukraine. But privately, as I said, we've seen already over these past months the provision of non-lethal assistance that does go directly to aiding and abetting Russia's war effort. And some further information that we are sharing today, and that I think will be out there soon, that indicates that they are strongly considering providing lethal assistance to Russia. To the best of our knowledge, they haven't crossed that line yet.
What form is that?
But as we're sharing.
Yeah. In what form?
Chuck, I don't want to get into the details in this moment, but there are various kinds of lethal assistance that they are at least contemplating providing, to include weapons. I made clear the importance of not crossing that line, and the fact that it would have serious consequences in our own relationship. Something that we do not need on top of the balloon incident that China's engaged in.
What kind of consequences are you talking about? What did you share with him?
Look, I'm not going to get into that, but I can again tell you that this is something that President Biden has raised directly with President Xi.
Let's bring in Janice Mackey-Frayer and Dan DeLuce for more on this. Dan, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit more about what the U.S. is alleging here. Do we know what kind of support China is said to have been providing?
Well, we already know that the U.S. sanctioned a Chinese company that was accused of providing satellite imagery to the Wagner Group mercenaries that fight for Russia and Ukraine. And we have reason to believe that this kind of non-lethal aid probably includes body armor, radio equipment, items like that. But they have not publicly listed what China has been doing. And now, of course, there's this concern that China is ready to cross that line and provide weapons and ammunition to Russia.
So, Janice, how is Beijing reacting to these accusations from the U.S.?
Well, Chinese officials are hitting back at these accusations. Today at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a spokesperson said, quote, "It is the U.S. who has been continuously providing weapons to the war. The U.S. is not qualified to give orders to China." You can't help but think that there's perhaps no coincidence to the timing of this suggestion by the Secretary of State. It comes as Wang Yi, China's top diplomat, is expected to arrive in Moscow to, among other things, lay the groundwork for a state visit to Russia by China's President Xi Jinping. Secretary of State also said he has spoken about consequences to the relationship for U.S. and China. The U.S.-China relationship, as we know, is in a very precarious spot. It was fraught even before the balloon incident. Now there's no cooperation on any issue. There are no meetings happening at any level. At the same time, we see the relations between China and Russia growing closer and deeper.
And Janice, we understand China is working on its peace plan for the war, which President Xi Jinping is expected to lay out in a speech later this week. Do we know what that could look like?
Well, Wang Yi, the diplomat, said that the position can be described as, quote, promoting peace talks. He said that in his speech in Munich. The issue, of course, is that it can be argued that China is not an impartial player to be playing a key role in peace talks for Ukraine. The relationship has grown ever closer. It was almost a year ago that Russian President Vladimir Putin was here, and he made the declaration with Xi Jinping, men who have met more than 40 times, this 5,000-word manifesto where they had a partnership with no limits. Over the past year, we have seen trade ties deepen between China and Russia. China is a #1 buyer of Russian energy. There has been trade in other goods. There have been joint military drills. At the same time, the relationship with the U.S. has deteriorated to the point where, since the balloon incident, defense officials here aren't even picking up the phone line with the U.S. All of this happening as China appears to be getting on with diplomatic business elsewhere. Last week, hosting Iran's president for deals and for talks. And, of course, this visit to Moscow by Xi Jinping that could happen as early as next month.
And Dan, I mean, we know Secretary Blinken met with Yi, his Chinese counterpart, on the sidelines of the Munich conference. He brought up the alleged spy balloon incident. It was a pretty heated moment. What happened there?
That's right, Joe. A very tense moment, and really a relationship that more and more does resemble the Cold War era, with both sides possibly giving weapons to different sides in a conflict in Ukraine. In that conversation, Secretary Blinken made it clear that this was totally unacceptable to have that spy balloon fly across the continental U.S. and violate U.S. airspace, but he did not hear his Chinese counterpart say sorry. Here's what Secretary Blinken had to say about that meeting.
I can tell you, no, there was no apology. But what I can also tell you is this was an opportunity to speak very clearly and very directly about the fact that China sent a surveillance balloon over our territory, violating our sovereignty, violating international law. And I told him quite simply that that was unacceptable and can never happen again.
Well, that is a very tense meeting, clearly, and things are very difficult right now between China and the United States, no question.
No doubt. So much happening around the globe right now. Janice and Dan, thank you both for joining us. We appreciate it.
The other big story we're following this morning is the latest on the health of former President Jimmy Carter.
Carter is at home in Plains, Georgia this morning after a series of hospital stays. Over the weekend, his foundation announced he has decided to forego further medical treatment and has opted for end-of-life hospice care at home instead. 98 years old, Carter is the oldest living former American president. The Georgia Democrat was elected the 39th president back in 1976. After leaving office, Carter continued his work through the Carter Center, promoting democracy and peaceful resolutions to conflict around the globe. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has more on Carter's condition.
Well, this morning, heartfelt messages of love and support for former President Jimmy Carter are continuing to pour in. The Carter Center has created a message board where people from around the country and across the globe are sharing treasured memories with the former president and just speaking about how much they love him and are praying for him and his family during this moment. We also know that President Biden has been in touch with the Carters who are here in Plains, Georgia, and he tweeted as well saying, quote, "We admire you for the strength and humility that you have shown during difficult times," adding, "May you continue your journey with grace and dignity, and God grant you peace." And peace is really the mood here on the ground here in Plains. This is something that President Carter has spoken about in the past. As a reminder, in his 80s, he battled cancer. He had melanoma that was in his liver and that spread to his brain, and he really defied the odds in surviving that. And after that experience, he spoke about this idea that he may have only had weeks left to live during that time, and he said that he felt at ease about it. He said that he had lived an adventurous and exciting life, and for that he was so grateful. And we saw his grandson also tweeting after this news was announced, saying that the Carters are at peace and that their home is full of love as it has always been. And the community here is certainly sending that love to Mr. Carter and his wife of more than 75 years who is by his side right now, Rosalind Carter. We were here yesterday as the church service let out, and of course that is the church that he attended, a church where he taught Bible study, and the members there spoke about how much they love him and how much he has meant to this community, and so many of those feelings being felt around the country today. Of course, President Carter served only one term in office, but after his time in office, he spent a great deal of his efforts working to fight for peace and also human rights around the world. He worked very closely with Habitat for Humanity, volunteering every year. He built in all more than 4,000 homes with that organization, and so he has certainly lived a very full life here. And so today, many people just continuing to send those thoughts and prayers as the former president has decided to forego any further medical treatment, as he mentioned some of those short hospital stays that he had been experiencing recently, and has now made the decision to enter home hospice care and to live out his final days at his home here in Plains, Georgia. Back to you.
All right, Priscilla, thank you.
5 people, including a child, were shot during Sunday night's Crew of Bacchus parade in New Orleans. Police say the child and 4 adults were all taken to area hospitals where they are expected to survive. 1 person has been detained and 2 guns were recovered from the scene. Police have not released any other details about the shooting. The parade is one of the largest in the city's world-famous Mardi Gras season.
Now to the latest on the Ohio train derailment, which has sparked serious concerns about air and water quality in the area. The CEO of the company that owns the train paid a visit to the site and met with some community members. NBC News correspondent George Solis has the latest from East Palestine.
Many residents here in East Palestine say they are outraged they did not have an opportunity to meet with Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw during his unannounced visit on Saturday. Now, we spoke with one business owner who met with the CEO privately, says he believes the CEO could be doing more. Tempers flaring in East Palestine.
I'm not happy at all.
Outrage brewing following Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw's unannounced visit on Saturday. Residents fuming as more questions linger over the toxic train derailment that's fueled concerns over air and water quality.
Why wasn't this voiced openly so that we could all have gone and had a few words with this person?
Mike McKim was among a small group of business owners and community members that spoke with the CEO privately.
He was apprehensive about coming here with a bunch of angry people. I'm not afraid to say that it wasn't right. And there's a lot of other people that feel the same way that I feel.
Security cameras from his newly opened winery captured the nearby fiery derailment. Customers now canceling reservations.
It's the American dream. You know, it's kind of turned into an American nightmare.
In an interview with NBC Ohio affiliate WFMJ, the CEO declined to answer specific questions about cleanup concerns at the site.
We worked with the Ohio EPA on safe operations
and safety for the community.
The company says they've distributed more than $2.6 million to help residents. The Department of Transportation saying they will hold the company accountable, adding that until the number of derailments is zero, everyone involved in our rail system must make safety improvements a priority. This as air and water testing continues. The EPA saying there are still no water quality concerns. NBC News has learned that Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost has sent a letter to CEO Alan Shaw informing him that his office is considering a lawsuit against the train company. This as the investigation into the derailment continues. Back to you.
All right, George, thank you.
Now to your morning news now. Weather. Winter is not quite done with us just yet.
It is February. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Great to see you. I know we've been so spoiled in the east, and we're going to be warm this week. That's a big weather headline. Another big weather headline is the winter weather out west. We have another powerful storm system. It's sort of a repeat performance to last week, where we're going to watch this cross-country storm first bringing snow today, a little more snow tomorrow, and then Wednesday. That's going to be a really active day with ice in the middle, and then on the warm side, watching the threat for severe weather. So on this Monday, we are looking at 15 million people impacted by winter alerts. We do have winter storm warnings. That's in the pink, a blizzard warning in the purple. Winter storm watches are in the blue, and winter weather advisories in the white. And this will be over the next few days, not just today, not just tomorrow, but these alerts stay in place through Thursday. And we're going to see some snow in feet and spots. Also really windy. So you combine the snow with the blowing winds. We're going to see some blowing snow. We're also going to see some whiteout conditions over the next couple of days. So 41 million people at risk for really high winds gusting up to 85 miles per hour. And these alerts stay in place through Wednesday as well. You can see those alerts extending from the northwest to the southwest into portions of the Rockies, and then most likely will be extended as we go throughout the next couple of days. So this is the setup for today. We have a couple fronts moving through. First, a clipper system brings some snow to portions of the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, into interior parts of the Northeast, but it's that big, powerful storm that's getting underway, and that's going to bring heavy snow and rain as it sort of expands as we go throughout the day. Very windy, as I mentioned, winds gusting anywhere from 65 to 85 miles per hour. Tuesday, the snow does expand to the Rockies and Northern Plains. We're going to see some whiteout conditions, really dangerous travel as we head throughout Tuesday. And then look at Wednesday. It's going to be a mess on Wednesday. We have blue, that is the snow on the cold side. You see some pink, that's your transition zone where we're going to see sleet and ice. That is particularly dangerous with power outages, also really difficult to travel on. And then on the warm side, we're watching once again for the chance of some severe storms, especially in the south, sort of the same spots as we've seen the past couple of weeks. So really not getting relief there. In terms of your snowfall forecast, it's going to be a lot of snow for some, locally 9 to 16 inches in portions of the Dakotas into Minnesota, also Wisconsin. South Dakota, you could see some heavy snow. Minnesota, you could see some heavy snow. And then we're going to be measuring that feet and snow in feet in portions of the higher elevations of the Cascades, so the higher mountains ranges in the west. Ice accumulation, this is what we're going to be concerned about. Tuesday and Wednesday, we're looking at the chance for some power outages. Where you see the pink, that's where we're expecting that. And so really difficult travel in those areas. Back to you guys.
Definitely some winter weather there. All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.